After almost 3 years of teaching English in Japan, I made the decision to return home to Australia and study a Master of Tourism. I've always had a love for travel, and I concluded that my post-teaching career would be to work in tourism. When an unforeseen global catastrophe slammed Australia's borders shut, I had no choice but to stay in Japan and continue teaching English. Being not only trapped in Japan but trapped inside the house all the time forced me to reevaluate my goals, life, and sense of self. After turning 30 and an intense year and a half of soul searching, I decided to start a YouTube channel and share my love of travel on the internet. In this video, I'll introduce myself and how my love of travel started me on my filmmaking journey, and I'll be sharing my story while climbing a mountain. Good morning. So Mount Takao is very easy to get to. It's only 1 hour from Shinjuku Station on the Keio line. And it is very noisy here at the station, so away we go. So if you want to pay a bit more, you can take the cable car to the top. However, I'll be hiking today. So even though this is right at the beginning of the trail, it's actually the steepest part. Let's keep going. Another steep part of the hike. Let's keep going. So this is the top cable car station. However, it only goes halfway up the mountain. If you want to go to the top, you have to walk from here. Thanks for waiting. There are a lot of shops like this one on the mountain, so you won't go hungry and you won't suffer a lack of souvenirs. Choose your own adventure. Do you want the easier, flatter path that takes longer? Or do you want the faster, more difficult path that takes the stairs? I think I will take this one. And I've just reached the summit of the mountain. So here it is, top of the mountain, 600 meters above sea level. I wanted to record more talking scenes here, but there are a lot of people. So usually you can see Mount Fuji from here, but it's a bit too foggy today. Time to head down, I think, and find a quiet spot to record. I grew up in Adelaide, which is Australia's 5th largest city. Growing up there was pleasant, yet pretty uneventful, so from a young age, I yearned for adventure and to escape the bubble that is South Australia. So like most kids at the time, I was drawn to the popular culture that was being imported from Japan at the turn of the millennium. I'm talking things like Pokemon, Digimon, Dragon Ball, Yu-Gi-Oh, Card Captors, Zoids, Beyblade, and so on. The most exciting part of school at that time was discussing these with my classmates. So knowing that all of these things originated from the mysterious island of Japan, I decided to study study Japanese in high school. While taking Japanese class, our teacher, an Australian woman, often shared her stories of when she was an English teacher in Japan. She showed us a lot of photos of her time there, and lots of Japanese movies too, like Tampopo. That movie is pretty hilarious, by the way, you should watch it. Fortunately, our school had an exchange program with Adelaide's sister city, Himeji, so a bunch of high school students from Himeji came to my school. I felt really lucky to be able to interact with them, so the students there my age were telling me stories about their life in Japan and how it compared with life in Australia, and it sounded really interesting. So just hearing about the way that Australia and Japanese schools were different, as well as life in Australia and life in Japan, was nothing short of mind-blowing. So I really wanted to visit someday, and that was when the seed of moving to Japan was planted. Fast forward 10 years and I was offered a scholarship to study in China. The Australian government was pushing all things China at that time, so I was encouraged to study Chinese instead of Japanese. I took a free semester of study in the Chinese countryside. Had a lot of fun experiences in China, but life in China was challenging to say the least. So I was in a city called Jinan, about 300 kilometers south of Beijing. So being the countryside, a lot of people there were really curious about me and were constantly coming up to me on the street to ask me questions, and a lot of them wanted to take photos with me a lot too. I enjoyed feeling like a celebrity at first, but after a few months it got pretty tiring. It started to wear me down to the point where even grocery shopping was exhausting. So it was in this period I mostly confined myself to my room, watching movies, playing video games, and eating way too many snacks. So it was a pretty difficult chapter in my life. However, the silver lining of that semester in China was the 10-day trip to Japan that I took with my friend. So being a tourist in Japan reignited my interest in the culture. We traveled from Tokyo to Kyoto to Osaka and to Kobe. Kobe will be important later on. I can remember seeing all of those places like my high school teacher had showed me. You know, all the beautiful temples and castles and neon lights and Mount Fuji and all that touristy jazz. Coincidentally, while we were there, we ran into movie star Dominic Monaghan when he was filming a TV series in Osaka. Anyway, the time we spent on this trip was way too short, so I always dreamed of coming back. This was when the dream of moving to Japan was starting to sprout. So after the China thing, I went through a pretty unhappy period in my life. I felt directionless and unhappy, and my weight continued to balloon. It was the summer of 2015, and instead of enjoying pool parties and life outside like a good Australian, I locked myself in my room and just watched hours and hours and hours of Japan on YouTube in between working overnight shifts at a petrol station. It was not really fun. So looking at all those young people on YouTube working as English teachers, living their best lives, having fun, I thought, should I do that? And then I started to think seriously about actually going and doing it myself. The idea of starting fresh in a new country with a new job and a new life and a new place, it started to overtake every waking moment. So because of all my self-doubt, and I really thought that I couldn't do it, I reached out to one now famous YouTuber for a piece of advice.
The first question I saw was from Dale Clayton.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, are there any gay foreign teachers in Japan? What are your thoughts on that? If you're gay, Dale, don't let that hold you back. Just go to Japan.
Come to Japan.
There was an interesting tidbit about me, and there wasn't there. So with that one final push, my dream of living and working in Japan had fully bloomed, and I decided to make a plan. I put my head down and finished my university degree and applied for a job in Japan. Getting a job in Japan was actually quite easy, so I left Australia in March 2017 to live in the city of Kobe. So teaching English in Japan was mostly a positive experience. I worked for an eikaiwa company. Eikaiwa means English conversation. So it's a school that teaches English conversation skills to both kids and adults. My first school in Kobe only focused on adults. So it was a lot of fun, but it's not really what you might imagine teaching is like. It's more like being a talk show host and entertaining groups of adults that are in front of you. So it was a little bit strange, but it gave me a lot of confidence. And I got to interact with those wonderful people of Kobe. However, the job required being a salesperson too, so I was responsible for ensuring that students were satisfied with my lesson and kept paying, and I would continually have to sell them extra stuff. So the business side of the job was starting to wear me down after 2 years, and that's when I made the decision to go back to Australia. But instead of going back to Australia, I decided to do one more year in Tokyo so I could spend more time with my partner who lives there. However, moving to Tokyo was probably my biggest mistake. So after a few months there, I'd made the decision to go back to Australia once and for all. However, it happened.
This week marks a dark milestone. It's been 18 months since Australia slammed shut its border to the rest of the world. Tonight, 38,000 Australians are waiting to come home from overseas, and quarantine caps are making the prospect of a Christmas with family seem out of reach again.
So the borders shut and I had no choice but to stay in Japan and to continue teaching English. Before the pandemic, I had this great plan of going back to Australia and studying a Masters of Tourism in Melbourne. And after studying that, I hoped to establish a tourism business that would operate between Japan and Australia. I've always loved tourism and travel. I liked the idea of showing Japanese people around Australia, or the idea of showing Australian people around Japan. However, the pandemic pretty much killed the tourism industry, so I had no choice but to stay. So I just kept teaching and coming home and playing video games and teaching and playing video games and watching movies and doing nothing. And I just got really bored. And I just concluded that I just had to try something new. So I'd always thought about making a YouTube channel, so I went and did it. So I've had a lot of fun making YouTube so far. Some of the highlights for me on this channel would be the unexpected mountaintop disco party in Enoshima, losing a fight with a talking toilet, open the door, and eating a hamburger in 4K. In the future, I'd like to make more and more travel videos in Japan, network with other people, and just see where the whole YouTube thing takes me. I'm really enjoying it so far. As for the name OpenWorld Japan, I've had that name in my head for a long time. The day I moved to Japan was actually March 3rd, 2017, which coincidentally was the launch date of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So after settling into Japan, I finally played the game. I remember coming home from work at night and just playing the game for hours and just loving the open world aspect of the game. And then on one of the weekends, I was climbing Mount Rokko, a similar mountain to this one here. And when I reached the top, I remember looking out at all of the fields and the trees and the sky and the shadows of the clouds on the land, and I thought, wow, it really felt like Japan itself was an open world game full of secrets and mysteries and hidden areas to uncover. So I thought, OpenWorld Japan, that's got a nice name to it. That could be the name of a YouTube channel or a tourism organization. So when I'd made that plan to go back to Australia and start a tourism venture, I had a half-baked entrepreneurial idea of calling my travel company OpenWorld Japan. So that's the meaning of my channel name. Time for some coffee. Alright, so I've said most of what I wanted to say. Amazing. I made this myself. So after this, I'll head back down. Well, this is the slippery 4th trail, which I've never gone down before. Let's see where it takes us. Certainly does look like it would be slippery. Oh, there's a suspension bridge. Interesting. Wow, number 4, slippery trail delivering the goods. I really wish I could give you guys some clearer views, but usually you get a really good view of Tokyo and Yokohama from here. If you want a clear blue sky, you should come in winter. In spring, the sky is a little bit foggy. I totally get why they call it the slippery trail. There are so many roots here that I feel like I'm going to slip over and die any second. Look at the trees. And I've made it back in one piece. So now I'll take the train back home. See you soon. So, thanks for watching to the end. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed my clumsy attempt to incorporate storytelling into a travel video. As for why the title of this video says filmmaking and not YouTube, well, when I was 18, I was enrolled in a filmmaking course. At the time, I had grand ambitions of being a film director, but I dropped out when I realized how difficult and expensive it would be to become one. Making movies required a lot more effort than I was expecting. But the dream never really died, so here I am attempting it on YouTube. I'd really like to get better at storytelling and editing from here on out. As for what I do for work in Japan now, I'm still working as an English teacher, but I'm working at a private university. It doesn't have all of those business aspects of a typical teaching in Japan job, and it has much better hours, so it allows me to do this. So, that's the end of my epic origin story. So far, I'm really enjoying reading and replying to all the comments that I get in the comment section down below, and it truly makes me happy to see the small community that's being built here. If you feel like commenting today, please let me know what you thought of today's video, and please tell me what you'd like to see in the future. And if this is your first time seeing me, I hope you'll subscribe for more. I don't want to be one of those YouTubers that always says, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe every 5 seconds, but it really means the world to me to see the subscriber count go up. So, that's all for today. I hope to see you again here, and I hope to see you in Japan once Japan opens its borders again. So, here's to an open world. Thank you!